take it from there. So Marilyn, apart from being someone who I enjoy speaking to on a very regular basis, and I consider to be a friend of mine, is a national board certified health and wellness coach. So Marilyn's specific area of expertise is in managing stress and improving the quality of sleep. She spent 8 years as a sleep and stress management therapist at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And she successfully worked with hundreds of active duty military members, veterans, and their families. So I'm extremely excited that we've got someone of Marilyn's caliber and knowledge and experience. But what I really most love about Marilyn is that she's so down to earth. And I really hope that you'll be able to see that as well. And what we're looking at here is having a human experience and a human conversation about all of these things. So let's start off. Marilyn, thank you so much. Welcome to this room full of very friendly people.
It's a tremendous pleasure and honor to be here. I'm really thrilled, really thrilled.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've really been thinking about since we first spoke is about these subjects of stress and sleep. Now, a few weeks ago, when I first started thinking about organizing these talks, it was very much with the understanding that we're in this very, very specific time. COVID-19 is having an effect on literally the entirety of humanity as we know it. But further on down the line, what I've realized, and especially when we articulate it as a stress and sleep, these aren't just corona issues. When I look at the form that I asked everyone to fill out and the questions that came through, and I reflected on my own life, I really realized stress and sleep were around long before corona. They will be around long after.
You bet.
And I want us to talk about that. But of course, it starts with this state of corona, and you too are also living through it. So why don't you tell us a tiny bit about you, your background, and of course, feel free to share what's happening in your own life at the moment as well.
Well, nobody will be surprised to find that my own life is turned upside down and inside out and is completely unpredictable. And I think I joined the world in expressing those sentiments. For someone like myself, and probably most of you out there, who we all like to be in control, this is very stressful. Our world leaders don't seem to know what's going on from day to day, especially our American world leaders. And that level of news and information, which varies from minute to minute, adds to our confusion. So these are very difficult, trying times, and you don't need me to tell you that. My work began at Walter Reed about 8 or 9 years ago, and I was very fortunate to find myself in a cardiac clinic where I became responsible for working with patients to try and help them avoid cardiovascular risk disease. And in doing so, we focused on the things that one can focus on, which is nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress management. And of course, in addition to that, there's some very important medical treatments that some of the patients were going through. But learning to handle stress well, learning to handle sleep better, learning to eat better, and I stress better, not perfect, and also to exercise, to move. And not like Olympic athletes, but if you're sedentary, to just get up and walk. All these behavioral changes made very positive impacts on people's health. And through this work, which lasted 8 years, I worked with people who were young and enlisted and whose normal meal was 8 McDonald's a day, to Surgeon Generals. And the work was very rewarding on every level and was pitched in a very personal fashion to everybody, depending on what their level of experience was of nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep management. And I had a wonderful experience there. Dealt with some very skeptical people who thought that stress management was for the sissies, especially in the military, where, you know, admitting to stress and wasn't exactly the thing to do. But in my work with generals and people high up on the echelons, there was an amazing sense of appreciative and gratitude to dealing with these things that secretly bothered people. And we were able to give them tools to help them. And very happy to say that the work ultimately was very successful and really helped people achieve a healthier sense of themselves as they left the program from when they began the program. And they had the tools. The key was they had the tools.
That's really, I love that you ended on that, the concept of tools, because I think that when it comes to stress, and it comes to sleep, but it comes to wellness in general, we all hope that there's an answer out there, but we're not sure what it is. And many people turn to medication, whether that is anti-anxiety or whether that is even light sleep aids. Now, you know, most of the people that I know have taken a sleep aid of some sort at various different points. But we'll come on to that afterwards. But I think that knowing that there are tools is a really, really important, you know, point to discuss.
Absolutely. And one of the things that comes to mind when you mention sleep, for those of us who are parents, most of us spent a lot of time and energy in creating beautiful sleep routines for our children. We didn't, you know, play with them, wind them up, you know, throw them around and then dump them into bed and say, time to sleep, babes. We created sleep routines, much of which was comprised of a bath, a story, cuddle time, stroking of the back. This is a sleep routine that teaches a child that it's time to sleep. And those sleep routines, which we were very probably strict in following when we had our children, because getting them to sleep was such a wonderful thing, we have long forgotten to do that for ourselves. And one of the things I worked on at the hospital was encouraging people to create sleep routines for themselves. Now, sort of sounded odd at the beginning. I don't need a sleep routine. You know, I work till 11 o'clock at night and then go to bed. And then guess what? I wonder why I can't fall asleep. So much of it is rooted in common sense. It's not rooted in science that is beyond our level of comprehension. But as we create routines for children and encourage them to sleep, and so they associate a bath time and a story with sleep, we need to do something very similar to ourselves to enhance sleep. We may not get the perfect sleep, but we can certainly aim to improve it.
I would love to dig into that. I think that it would be great to step a tiny bit back and to look at this situation. As much as I said that COVID is, you know, that stress and sleep existed beforehand, it'll exist after, there's a reality to the fact that it's exacerbating a lot of these experiences. And as someone that really, you know, is experiencing this in a personal level, but also from a professional level, talk to me a tiny bit about what's happening right now. What's happening with regards to our COVID? Everyday stress, just everything. Give us the overview. On the news, me included, seemingly can't turn it off. And what happens after 20 minutes, it does tend to become repetitive, if you've ever noticed. There's not news happening 24 hours a day. So I think it's very important to be informed. It's also very important to draw boundaries and say, that's okay for now. Turn it off. We have to turn off that source of toxic news because it is very disturbing. It is deaths and losses and tragedies.
And there's only so much we can all take before we begin to internalize it, and it's very disturbing, whether you internalize it or not. So, turning the news off, staying informed, but finding your boundaries and adhering to them. The second thing is to, as I mentioned before, creating some sort of bedroom routine. Now, this is hard when we're all living, working, playing, socializing, doing everything in typically small apartments, whether they're in Israel or anywhere else around the world. So it's going to take a little bit more effort. So what we're trying to do is cut off work at a point where it's appropriate. I can't tell you when that is. You have to get your work done. And when it's done, if you can, try and put your papers away. Now, the computer is our link to the outside. So I would like to say, put your computer away, but that's hard to do because that is our link to all of our friends. So the computer is a double sword. It's a work tool and it's a social tool. If you can, I really encourage you to try and change the atmosphere in your house. We often do this, but I'm going to ask you to do this more deliberately. Light a candle, light an aromatic candle. Put some lovely music that you enjoy on. Change the energy in the room from a workplace to a more relaxing place. If you can, try and keep your work out of your bedroom. Try. It's not always possible. These are just suggestions which help. The other thing you can do, some of us have these lovely aromatic sprays, like aromatherapy sprays. I don't necessarily suggest you go out and buy a dozen. I have some lavender sprays in my house. I've got some orange citrus. Change the aroma in the room if it's not through a candle. Breathe it in. Breathe it in. Take a moment to think about where you bought that, why you bought that. It's just a moment. It's a beautiful moment. Share it with yourself. It's a gift. Does it change stress? The stress is there. The stress is always going to be there, whether it's COVID or something else. We're trying to balance. We're trying to manage the stress by rewiring different parts of our brain so that we don't have to be stressed all of the time. We can literally take a break. The idea of, in terms of sleep, trying to end your work as far away from when you're going to be trying to go to sleep as possible. And I can't say, you know, the ideal time is 2 hours. Sometimes, you know, we're all working until the very last minute. But try and give yourself a minimum of about half an hour when you turn that computer off before your head hits the pillow, because it's very difficult to wind down when your mind is going to be so focused on work, and no doubt what you have to do the next day. One technique which many of us do not do, but has a tremendous ability to relax the body, is to shower or bathe before we go to bed. Most of us don't. We shower in the morning. It's a different experience when you shower at night. It helps the heat, the rising of the heat of the body and the cooling down of the body is also a way of initiating actually a relaxation response in the body, and it's conducive to sleep. So I strongly recommend, if you're having trouble sleeping, to bathe at night and then go into bed, possibly with a candle lit but the lights dimmed, if you choose to read or play music. But try not to lie there in silence with the work tape going through your head. So, you know, these are all topics into which we could go much more. So I'm just sort of throwing out some ideas.
You definitely could go into them, and I know that if anyone else here is feeling what I'm feeling right now, you're reminding me of that experience that I have had on countless occasions of waking up in the middle of the night. Usually, weirdly, it's around 4 a.m. And I've spoken to lots of friends about this, that they often wake up at the same time. And my mind is just non-stop whirring around.
Yes.
I think that there is a whole conversation here to be had about that. And one of the most
There is.
enlightening things that someone once told to me when they asked me to dig a bit deeper, well, what's happening in your head? And I started to become aware now when I wake up, what's happening. Firstly, I see the circular thinking. But secondly, what they did was they got me to realize that what's really keeping me awake is fear. Now, it translates itself into things that I haven't done, things that need to be done, things that I forgot, worries about work. But when I translated it all down, it would be fear. It would be something that would be visiting me at night. I wonder if that's something that you're familiar with. And I want to expand that as well to this situation we're in of
So,
a lot of fear.
Rich, what that makes me think of is the fact that, you may have put your head on the pillow to go to sleep the night before without doing any form of, I'm going to say, bedtime routine to try and dampen that level of brain activity. When we breathe deeply, relax the body, engage in some guided imagery, which hopefully we'll have chance to do as this phone call proceeds, what we're actually doing is getting more blood to the hippocampus, the part of the brain that is responsible for emotional regulation. Now, when you do it one time, no, we don't all become magically emotionally regulated. This is layer upon layer upon layer of practice. So when you temper down your anxieties before you go to bed, I would like to think that you're reducing the chance of them rearing up at 4 o'clock in the morning, because you've to some extent tempered them down. The other thing that one can do, which is very effective, and again, different things work for different people. This is not one size fits all. So try a lot of things. One thing that's very important, that really worked for a lot of people, was before they went to bed, was to write down on a piece of paper the tasks they had to do for the next day, the things that were concerning them, but to take them out of the brain and put them on a piece of paper, and to know that they would be there the next morning to be dealt with and tackled, as opposed to needing to wake up in the morning to reclaim them in case you've forgotten them. Now, does this work for everybody? It does work for some, because I worked for 8 years. And sometimes I would be a little skeptical suggesting it because, does it sound a little bit too good to be true? It doesn't matter. If it works for you to write down what your concerns are, what your tasks are for the next day, and just try and let it go.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And letting it go isn't easy the first time you try, because those memories are going to try and cling to that brain. But when you realize that this is helping you, you're sleeping better, and you wake up more effective, more productive to deal with the list of concerns you have, it's a win-win. Yeah. Worth a try. Worth a try.
I really like that thought around that what we, it's about investing in our sleep, that it's such a precious thing for us, and that many of us, just as you said at the beginning, that we invest so much time as parents. I'm not a parent yet, but in getting a child to sleep, do we invest even the smallest amount of time in our own self? And we're so important,
With children, we have mobiles, we have the dim lights, we have the rubbing of the back, we have a bath. Why do we bathe children at night? Maybe because they stink a little, but it's also a very relaxing experience for the child to be wrapped up and cuddled and warmed, and then the body temperature comes down and the lights are dimmed, so melatonin is promoted. We don't put a child in a bedroom that's got disco lights flashing, because that's just stimulating. We want darkness, we want mellow, we want gentle, and the baby eventually hopefully lulls off and goes to sleep. We have lost that as adults completely, because I'm embarrassed to say we're all on our devices checking, and one last message, and the blue light from the phones and the TV stimulates it works against melatonin. So the idea is keep the bedroom calm, cool, if one can. And you know what? We did this before IT. When I've left my phone outside of the bedroom, life did go on. I need to get better at that. The other thing that I want to mention about a bedroom is, again, a very simple technique, but many of us have digital clocks everywhere telling us what time it is. And a little trick that I would like to share with our audience is the notion of covering up that clock, because the minute we wake up and we see 4:03 a.m., what happens? My brain goes into overdrive thinking, oh my God, I've got to get up in 3 hours, and, boom, 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 boom. And I want to be sleeping, but gee, I don't want to be sleeping. Oh, I'll just check the news. It's a disaster. It's better. It's a very subtle trick to the brain, but if you just take the time away, you woke up, you may need to go to the bathroom, come back and go back to sleep without thinking of what time it is and judging and how much more sleep you've got and what should I do and why can't I sleep? Just cover up the clock. Turn your cell phone, if it's not out of your bedroom, over so there's no light, there's no buzzing. Try and keep all the stimulation down as far as possible. We did this in the old days. This is very hard to do now, but it's really not. We just have to physically do it.
Right. We have to put some effort in and make some changes.
Little effort.
We won't expect it to change automatically.
It doesn't change automatically, but it really can grow into improved sleep. And if you are literally improving your sleep, that's progress. Rich, one last thing, if I may suggest.
Of course, please.
Very quickly. In these days, alcohol may be on our menu plan. For everyone, go easy on alcohol at night. It's a diuretic. It tends to keep you up, makes you pee. Go easy on alcohol, and try not to eat too heavy a meal 2 to 3 hours before you sleep to aid in digestion. I mean, some people can eat a great meal 10 minutes before and sleep right through it. They're not the people we're worried about. We're concerned about people. We're trying to help people who maybe are eating too late and then are finding they've got indigestion issues. So eat early, minimize your alcohol at night, and also minimize your drinking at night to try and avoid bathroom visits. Simple techniques.
No drinking, no binge eating, and no Netflix. You've literally removed all 3 of my coping mechanisms.
Well, I might as well kill myself right now.
Yeah, absolutely. What are we going to So look,
minimize. I didn't say remove. Minimize.
Thank you.
Yes.
One of the things that I was most fascinated to speak to, or one of the reasons why I was most fascinated to speak to you, Marilyn, was because of your experience with veterans and serving soldiers.
Yes.
Now, I'm not the first person to say this, but many people have compared the situation which we're in at the moment in terms of COVID, to a war-like situation. Now, again, I think that's a huge subject, which we could spend a long time thinking of. But one of the things that you said to me when we first spoke was, number one, stress is a fact of life. Let's not pretend that it's not. It's a fact of life. But what we're looking to do is not necessarily to always reduce the source of stress, which is one side of the equation. Yes. And I think that what you've spoken about in terms of, what they call sleep hygiene and removing ourselves from the news is one way of removing ourselves from the source of stress. If you know that the news is triggering you, don't watch the bloody news.
Yeah, how could it not trigger you?
Right. But the other side of it, so one side is reducing our source of stress, but the other is managing our response to it. Knowing that stress is a reality, and knowing that especially right now, we're in a situation where we're going to be constantly bombarded. The other side of the equation is managing our response to it. And I think for me, this is the most fascinating area, because it allows us to dig a bit deeper into what's going on inside. And it also allows us to dig into some tools and techniques that can allow us to manage what's happening when we're feeling stressed. And I remember you told me a tiny bit about the work that you did at the hospital in that area, and especially the work of Dr. Benson as well.
Oh, can you see?
There we go.
Here we go. And I would like to say that his book is dedicated to Marilyn, except not me.
Oh.
Okay, well, his wife of 38 years. Okay, but we share the same name at least. Dr. Herbert Benson. He is still alive. He's an elderly man. He's a cardiologist, and his work comes out of Harvard. He was the very first person to propose the notion that it sounds odd now, but that mind and body were connected, and what went on in the mind had a physiological response in the body. Prior to that, hundreds of years prior to that, there had always been the belief in the separation of the mind and body. Didn't matter what the mind was doing. The doctors came in, fixed the body, gave you medicine, did surgery. The mind was totally irrelevant. Dr. Herbert Benson did a lot of work on, his work followed on from what he was learning about Eastern medicine and how people have for so many years had meditated in the East. And it was not mainstream. It was considered pretty cookie and pretty alternative. But he began to examine under the auspices of Harvard with specific scientific examination what was going on with the body when it went through a stress reaction. Now, let me back up a little bit. Stress is something, our response to stress is something that we are born with. It is a survival mechanism. It has allowed us as a human race to survive to this day. Stress is wired in us to provide cortisol and adrenaline. These are hormones, which are, in other words, fat and sugar. And this fat and sugar serves to take our bodies to places of extreme energetic response, visual acuity. We hear better. Interestingly enough, our blood clots faster when we've got tons of fat and sugar in our body in case we're injured. It is our response, the survival response is to allow us to escape from fear, flight or fear, fight, give us our best way to survive. So it's a tremendously critical response to have. Herbert Benson, through his work, realized there was another response that we have that he called the relaxation response, which to some extent is an antidote to the survival response. Having said that, the survival response is always with us, and if God forbid our house went on fire, I would run out of here like a bat out of hell, faster probably than I knew I was capable of, because our muscles are receiving this sugar, this fat, and boy, we're going. The relaxation response, however, is able to rewire that response, because that stress response in our current day life is not tremendously helpful, given that our sources of anxiety and stress are not coming from things that we need to flee from, like the old days, like the tiger, like, use your imagination, the old caveman days, Scottish clans killing you, you had to have a survival response. We don't need it anymore, because our sources of stress nowadays, everybody has their own. Every source of stress is valid. What would be valid to a 4-star general would be very different what's valid to a stay-at-home mom. But the damaging effect on the body is the same. So a mum with a newborn who can't sleep could be more at risk than a 4-star general who is commanding troops in Afghanistan, depending on how one manages that stress. So the work is not so much about reducing stress. It can sometimes be done, and avoiding stress and making changes. This is a beautiful response to stress, a very important one to know. We don't have to be in a stressful situation always. If it's regarding a commute, if it's regarding not drawing boundaries with friendships, we can change certain things. But in this day of COVID, there's very little, we don't have a lot of control. We don't have a lot of control. We are being told daily what to do, what not to do. It does change daily. For those of us who like routine, these transitions are very hard. So we are able to utilize Dr. Herbert Benson's techniques to engage and elicit what he called the relaxation response. And what is that? The relaxation response are definable biological markers which bring down our blood pressure, bring down our heart rate, reduce our metabolism, get us into a very relaxed state where there's no tension in our artery, less tension in our arteries and veins, less sugar and fat pulsating through our body that is released by our adrenal glands, because if we're stressed, they think we're going to fight or flight. Well, what fight or flight are we doing with COVID? None. The fat or sugar in our body, if it isn't dealt with, serves over time, and it's over time. It is not a one-time fix, but over time, it thickens our arteries, it hardens our arteries. It can ultimately lead to cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes. It can raise levels of inflammation in the body, which is the fertile ground for the disease process. So on so many levels, when we manage our stress, we can do our very best to manage those internal physiological responses in our body, to try and create hormonal stability, allowing us to still deal with and manage the stress, but without that massive response to the amygdala, which is the reactive part of our brain. We want the blood to go to the hippocampus, where our thinking can be more emotionally regulated, our memory can remain in a good state, and we can be calm, productive, and effective. Again, doesn't happen overnight. These are learned techniques. They're not God-given. Very few people know how to do this unless their mothers and fathers were yogis, and mine certainly wasn't. You learn how to do this, but sadly we're not taught this. Herbert Benson's work from the 70s brought this into mainstream medicine, absolutely. And now these mind and body centers are all adjunct departments of leading academic institutions all over the world, including NIH, Stanford, Yale, Harvard. These are all now mainstream. They are not exclusive to mainstream medicine, they're in addition to mainstream medicine. So with treatment and these techniques, our bodies can be put in a position to heal better, heal stronger, and heal more effectively.
So fascinating, so fascinating, and I really want you to continue. What I loved from what you said, though, is that it is both teachable and learnable. We
Yes.
are thrown into this life with
Yes.
a system that is designed very, very well to protect us. Millions of years worth of fine-tuning has created a system that is designed to protect us and is very good at what it does.
It's excellent at what it does.
Excellent at what it does. And if either any of us were ever to, I experience it anytime I see a spider, but if I was in the jungle and I saw a bear or a lion, I would also probably experience it. But we know that our bodies are very good at it.
Yes.
To our detriment, the system hasn't quite caught up with the speed of change. And the brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between a tiger or a work deadline.
Oh, beautifully said, Rich. Yes.
Thank you.
Beautifully said.
And so we
It
are in a
has no
state.
idea.
It
It
has
has
no
no
idea.
idea.
So
No.
we're in a state of, the system is designed for acute stress response, it's a protective response. We're in a state of
Survival. Yes.
chronic survival. And our
Yes.
phones and the life in which we lead, and I think that we see that in the news, by the way, because we all know that news is designed to keep us addicted to it. It's a business after all. Each one has got their business, and they make money from us, and they create a product which keeps us coming back for more. And
Yes.
their ingredient in that is fear.
Oh,
They're
yes.
very, very good at keeping us scared. And we see that with all the statistics going around, and we all have to now get, extra supplemental information in order to, but I think that what I loved about what you said, to come back to it, is that, okay, we weren't born with the guidebook.
No.
But we have learned a lot about it, and people like Dr. Benson and people like yourself and others experts in the field have a lot to tell us lay people about what to do when we get stressed, what to do when we're stuck in circular thinking, what to do when we're facing an extremely challenging situation. There is what to do.
There is what to do. I like to liken this to anything that we learn to do as a child or as an adult or as an older adult. You practice. And why do we get better at playing the piano or riding a bike or doing any task when we practice speaking in public? Why does it get better? It gets better because we are making connections in our brain that weren't there before. We are learning how to do something, and with practice, we get better. But what's happening is we are making connections in the brain that weren't there before, that allow us to play the piano a little better, to do anything a little better. We're all learning, many of us out there are learning to be quite self-reliant now. This COVID virus has asked a lot of us to look inside and find skills to take care of ourselves that we often went outside to get done for us. That wasn't said very articulately, I'm sorry, but we contract out. We contract out for our hair, for our nails, for our meals, for our entertainment, for relaxation. Going out to a club, going out to a party, socializing. We are now having to look inside and find, hopefully, our core, our strength, and work on strengthening it, because it may not be strong, but we have it. And the beauty is to continue to do better. Every day, maybe do a little better. And if some days happen that you go back a step, that's okay too. I mean, we are human, we are learning. This COVID came upon us with no guidebook. It has unified the world. It has to some extent crippled the world. And it's not so easy now to look outside for someone to fix it. We need to look inside and learn to manage it as best we can. So it isn't about not being anxious in the least. It's about managing the anxiety, doing the things that we know work, and as we do them more, they work better because the connections are slowly being made. So the first time you ride on a bicycle, you'll fall off and skin your knee. The first time you do this breathing exercise, you may come out of it thinking a variety of things. One of them may be, well, that was a complete waste of time. I have to say, when I first did it, I wasn't bowled over. When I first did it, I couldn't help thinking, I've got a load of laundry to fold, and I could be doing that right now while I'm breathing. And that's the truth. That was the track that was going through my brain. It didn't take too long to move away from that and to realize that this was a beautiful gift that I could give myself, that everyone can give themselves. The stress is there. You get a break from it. You can come back to it with a slightly clearer, more focused mind. And it doesn't have to be a 24/7 thing, which could really be very damaging to all of us because it's just too much. And that's when people would turn possibly to things like drugs or alcohol or, medicine, which is not a long-term answer or a healthy answer. But yes, it's there. That's why people, I'm sure, drink. There have been times when I've wanted to have a good couple stiff gin and tonics too, to turn my mind off. And I've had one, but I understand it, I enjoy it, and it's not a regular thing. So there's nothing wrong with a drink. There's nothing wrong with a lot of things, but you don't want to become dependent on something external to yourself, because the sense of power and control that you can claim by being able to take care of yourself, whether you're a young person, an adult, or an older adult, is self-empowering. And that's a good place to be. That's a good place to be.
Wow. That was incredibly insightful.
It was?
Yeah, I know it for myself, and I saw a lot of the comments that are coming through on the chat.
Oh, I'm glad I can't see them.
No, you'd be incredibly pleasant. Everyone is people that are commenting. I think that takeaway of we are used to outsourcing stress management,
outsourcing everything,
and that we are being called upon to look within, and that ultimately that is a call to empowerment.
Oh, yes.
And a call to a greater sense of resilience and joy for the times, after COVID, because there will be after COVID.
Yes.
And it's, on some level, and I don't want to put too much on this because it's a very challenging and traumatic experience, but within it, there is a silver lining that we have the opportunity to grow from it.
There is when you get to a certain age, I hope that brought some laughter amongst my audience. You've gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot of pain, a lot of joy, and everything in between. And there are silver linings to every cloud. The problem is sometimes seeing them at the time. It's very much easier to see them afterwards. So this experience, I believe, is teaching a certain generation how to really take care of themselves, how to prepare good, nutritious food for themselves, that it isn't a mystery, that it doesn't have to be like Top Chef. You don't have to produce an art of work, which of course is beyond most of us. And I believe there's a lot of self-satisfaction and confidence that is growing in many people as they're navigating through this crisis, by realizing that they can learn, that none of us are experts really at anything, and you can do things that don't have to be perfect on the first shot. They get better on the second shot. You burn your food, so what? You don't burn it the next time, or you burn it less. It isn't about knowing every answer. It isn't about knowing every technique. It's about taking care of oneself and trying to be, along the way, kind. Very kind. I have been the recipient of great kindness from some neighbors. I know people I've spoken to who are on this call have also received kind, unexpected gestures. I think this is one of the most beautiful takeaways of this experience. Not that we didn't know to be kind before, but perhaps everybody was just very busy. We're now not so busy. And it gives us time to think about our relationships with ourselves, our family, our community, our friends, isolated people who might live next to us or upstairs, and how easy it is to say a kind word and what a difference it makes in someone's life. We all know this theoretically. I know I'm not telling anything to anybody that they don't know. I'm not that smart, believe me. But in delivering a smile, a kind word, it goes far. And I really hope that is something that we don't forget when this COVID is over.
Me too. Me
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And I think that that kindness is not only, you know, important and beautiful for the people around us. It's incredibly important for ourselves as well. Being kind to ourselves in and amongst this, doing things that are good for us and keeping us
Self-care.
in a place
Yes.
of calm resilience is extremely important. Um,
Absolutely. And of course, it's the difficult thing, as you know, Rich, and everybody on this call knows, is the balance. And that is a work in progress for all of us. Balance. Trying to do enough for oneself without becoming selfish, reaching out to others. And again, you know, with all the time that we have on our hands, what I'm finding is that I can make 1 or 2 calls to people during the day. I don't necessarily want to make 20, because that then begins to take more than it gives, because you don't want to drain yourself. So with this time we have, and Pesach coming up, and there's some, you know, free time in Israel, take time to reach out to someone who you haven't reached out to in a while. You'll be amazed at their response. You'll be amazed. I read somewhere, this isn't an original idea, but you know, our generation don't write letters anymore. I'm not suggesting you all write letters, but for those of you who like to write, send a card. You know, the texts are lovely, the instas are lovely. They're not the same as a letter, and it can be a short letter. Journaling, people find a lot of stress release in journaling. Again, doesn't have to be screeds of journaling. We don't have to be authors. Just writing down things, getting some thoughts that may be stressful from here onto the paper, seeing them, realizing they don't have to control us. What can we do to improve a situation? One step at a time. Learning to take small steps so that we feel successful, so that builds our confidence to do more.
Great. So wonderful. And again, as with all these conversations, we feel like we're just scratching the surface. There are
Yes.
books and books and talks
Oh,
and talks, and I know that you know, at the end of this, everyone, I am recording this, so I'll be distributing it via a YouTube link to everyone, and also giving Marilyn's website where you can contact her directly if there's any subject here that has particularly, you know, spoken to you and that you want to know more about, then I know that Marilyn will be only too happy to speak with you on a private one-to-one basis.
thrilled, thrilled.
I'm conscious of the time, and I want to perhaps think about two more things that we can do. I'm really keen that everyone has an opportunity, even in this talk, to ask a question. And if the question that you submitted hasn't been answered, please feel free to note in the chat below. Emily, Marilyn's amazing daughter, is going to be moderating the chat. So there is a chat down at the bottom of the screen. And if there's a question that you want to ask Marilyn, then please do write it down. But one of the things that I really like about this opportunity, that Zoom, you know, just because it's digital, it doesn't mean that it can't be practical. And I would, sorry, Ralph, yes, also your amazing daughter, indeed. He's making he's claiming a stake. Now, one of the things we spoke about was, and this is a tool that people could take away, is the power of the breath. How to use breathing and potentially some guided imagery to help us in stressful situations. So do you want to tell us a tiny bit more about that, and then perhaps lead us through you know, a breathing exercise?
I would love to. One of the reasons why it's so easy to ignore the breathing technique, the relaxation response, is because it sounds a little bit too good to be true. Well, in 1975, as I mentioned, Herbert Benson was considered a heretic. And now, you know, he's a leading expert with many, many publications behind him. And, you know, I've read his book, and it isn't so academic that it's beyond us. It's beautiful because it is easy to follow, it's effective, and really the key to the success is to do it. Thinking about doing it will not bring results. Doing it. The other beautiful thing about actually breathing with mindfulness and deliberation is that you don't need to sit and do this for an hour in a pretzel shape. His recommendations are a little bit longer than mine were at the clinic, so I'm going to go with mine. 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes. We had work that we did that for some people, they could handle 2 minutes. And if you've ever known how quick 2 minutes goes, believe me, we can all do 2 minutes. The thing is to get started. So no, you don't get started with an hour, because 99% of us would give it up on the first go. So the relaxation response, which is the reduction of the heart rate, reducing metabolic rate and the breathing rate and blood pressure and hypertension, is what Dr. Benson called the relaxation response. And what that does is prevents the body from going into a state of fight or fear and creating all the drama ready for the great battle. Higher inflamed levels, higher levels of inflammation, which can alter our genetic makeup and down the line create disease of any sort. Doesn't matter what they are, but we all know what they are. So we're trying to keep our body calm and solid with space so that we can respond to whatever the stress source is in a practical, calm way, making our communications clearer. And this is where it's so beautiful. It's simple work. It is your work, my work. It isn't about learning from an expert. It's about practicing it and realizing what feels good, what you like, getting into it and doing it for as long as a few minutes and then stopping and then perhaps coming back to it later in the evening. And very soon you realize this is a little gift you're giving to yourself to balance the stress and the anxiety of often a very long, hard-working day that's filled with sadness about, you know, our immediate future not being the way we would like it to be. So when we do this breathing, it doesn't change the fact that we're dealing with COVID. It doesn't reduce the source of the stress. It is helping us manage our physiological response to stress, which is something I learned about 10 years ago. And you get better at it the more you practice. And there are times when I'm going to admit you're not so good at it because sometimes something happens and oh boy, we get stressed. And that's okay, because what the most dangerous kind of stress is the low-grade chronic stress that we adapt to as part of our life and we take on as normal. So this COVID experience that we're going through, I would like to hope that it won't be repeated anytime soon and it won't go on for too long, and hopefully we'll all be able to get back to normal. But we need to then be very careful that our normal doesn't incorporate what it does for most of us, which is that low level of stress, which we adapt to, we manage with, but insidiously is damaging us over time, which is what the research in the military showed, how everybody was so effective in dealing with stress when they were young and in middle management and senior roles. And by the time they get to be old men, they've got very severe cardiac problems, very severe, from lack of sleep, from poor nutrition, from also not knowing how to manage stress well. Instead of what they did was they buried it and just soldiered on as one has to do in war. You know, you can't necessarily in the middle of war go and take a 5-minute, you know, breath break. But, you know, there are times when one can, and that's what you have to grab. You can't take this kind of breath work when you're in the middle of a deadline. You really can't, but you can take a couple of minutes to slow down your breath, deepen your breath, and just try and exercise a little bit of pause on your adrenal glands, a little bit of pressure, so that they don't get the message that they've got to go into that full fear or flight response. And it's practice. The body's got to learn this. So the breathing, it's so simple because we have our breath with us all the time, but we're all breathing without paying any attention to it at all. And it sounds a little new agey to start paying attention to our breath, but that's where it begins. That's where it begins. Focusing on the breath, and in doing so, dialing down the toxicity of the external stimuli, because I, for one, cannot focus on my breath and worry about COVID at the same time. So as I think about my breath and visualize the expansion of my lungs, and see the oxygen supplies going to all the organs and bones and cells and muscles of my body, that's where my attention is for the moment. And that's where we can take a break from everything that's external to us and begin to create and elicit this relaxation response in our body, which we can call upon anytime through the breath being with us. We need no equipment, no IDs, no passwords, no fancy apps, all of which are wonderful. But I love this because it brings it back to what the body has been designed to do for itself, by itself. And we need nothing but our mindfulness to do it. I find that very empowering and very much wonderful about being in control at a time when we're not in control of very much in our lives.
Definitely. I really like that idea, that we've spoken about it a bit, that this is about putting us back in the driving seat the time
Yes.
we don't have to be prisoners to this experience of,
no, we don't.
of stress.
No, we don't. I used to use that expression a lot at work in the hospital. This is about putting us in the driving seat and temporarily moving our car out of that fast lane that we're all in, you know, speeding down the highway. We're temporarily driving our car. We're going over slowly to the middle lane or the inside lane, where we can just take some time to be. And when we're ready, we slowly step back into where we need to be. So this isn't about, of course, slowing down our productivity, our effectiveness, you know, talking like we're in a trance. Quite the contrary. This work can lead to clarity, increased effective oral and written communication, and can help to make things clearer in our mind when we're being bombarded by so much personal, professional, financial concerns.
Right, totally, because the brain is not designed to do both survival and complex thinking at the same time. It can do one or the other.
Yes.
So I think that's a really important point for those of us who, when we're stressed about a work situation, you know, think that the stress is actually helpful. I've said that before, and someone's just come off mute. Oh, I'm just going to put them back on mute. There we go. When sometimes, you know, people will say, you know, stress it helps me. It helps me be productive. I find it quite interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, stress can be an incredible motivator. Stress isn't, okay, stress can be an incredible motivator, and some people really respond to it, and it gets things done. And that's fine. Gets things done, we're done. Stress over. The danger is with the chronic stress that we adapt to, that we don't even notice. That's the real dangerous type of stress. It isn't, you know, okay, we all have a deadline and we'll get there, and, you know, I have to do it. Those types of one-offs, you know, are not in the long term damaging. And stress can be very motivating. But for some of us, it can be very debilitating. So you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself. And I didn't work with anybody at any level in the hospital who did not benefit from breaks to go outside, to look out of a window, to slow down their breath just a little bit, to go back inside of themselves and then step back into the task. That did not damage or hurt anybody. I mean, we know there are world leaders, and I'm not going to quote them because, you know, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But most leaders of world corporations and world leaders have some form of stress management. You know, I did a research project on this once, and it's amazing. You know, they all have some form of managing stress, which allows them to multitask, and they all take breaks, and they all find what they need, what, you know, so it's not one size fits all. It could be music for some. It could be, I mean, I find music very soothing if you put the right type of music on that you like. For some, it's jazz. For some, it's new age. For some, it's violin. Doesn't matter what it is. It just has to work for you. Also, something that works beautifully for me at this time of year is going outside and seeing the incredible blooming of our trees, which right now is in peak, you know, and just to look at them, but to look at them and really see. So to pay attention to the, again, it's a form of mindfulness, to pay attention to not, oh, they're just lovely trees, but to look at them closely, to discern the different shades of colors that you're seeing, to pay attention in a way that most of us don't. We walk past, we say lovely flowers, we're busy. My husband went for a walk today with the dogs, and I said, did you see the trees? He said he didn't even notice them. Now, not trying to make fun of my husband, but you have to be mindful and look at them, and then you can smell them, you can touch them, you can certainly not taste them, you can smell, you can look, you can feel them on your face, you can go, because they hang down, you can go in them, and you can have a beautiful experience that lasts just a moment, but you can recall that experience later on in the day and gain serenity, pleasure, joy, calmness from it. And you can go back to it. You can go back to it. And one of the distinctions I make is the difference between passive relaxation and active relaxation. So active relaxation is easy. It's when we're all free and beautiful and go on holiday and sit on a beach in a hammock with a gin and tonic. And yeah, boy, we're relaxed and we're having a blast. That's not difficult for a lot of us. What's really more challenging is to engage in passive relaxation, which is when we're sitting in our home where we have our stresses and our pressures, and I don't need to list what they are, and to actively engage that relaxation response through deliberate breathing and guided imagery behavior. It's beautiful, it's powerful, it can be done. And yes, it's easier on the beach in the Caribbean with a gin and tonic, but those are not the kinds of people I need to work with or help or share or learn from. We can all do that. Oh, you're mute.
Sorry.
Oh,
I said
there
none
you
of
go.
us are,
Sorry.
you know, none of us are going to the Caribbean anytime
No.
soon. And
No.
in fact, for many of us, we might not even be able to go and walk out and see the trees. So I'm fascinated to see if we can experience, you know, here in this Zoom call, some of this, some of the breathing technique that you spoke
Yes.
about, and the relaxation.
I'm ready to go into that, but one of the things I just want to add, because, you know, of course, as you talk to me, Rich, you know, things are coming in my mind all the time. For those of us who can't go out for whatever reason, and it is not the same, but bring up those images on your computer. They're all on the computer. Bring up images of whatever brings you joy. As you know, all the world-class museums are inviting us to go on virtual tours. You can go around the world on your computer. It is not the same. However, in this day and age, it's a good second. And so for those of us who cannot go out, what brings you joy? What are the images? And Google them and bring them up and just stare at them and enjoy and absorb and flood your emotions with them. Flood yourself with them. Don't make it a one-time thing.
That's lovely. That's a really nice thought. And I have a friend Daniel, who is on the call as well, who on his Instagram stories is now going back into the past and sharing clips of happier times and volleyball on the beach and sunsets.
Beautiful.
And it really is gorgeous to see it.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
that was another. I mean, I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but another thing is to go back and look at those lovely family albums or boxes of photographs. For those of us who have not organized our photographs, go look at things which take your mind off the current state of affairs, whether it's loved ones. I mean, this is part of the guided imagery, of course, but we're lucky enough to have beautiful photograph albums. And again, you don't need to spend 10 hours looking at them, but what joy they can bring, what beautiful memories they can bring up to the surface, which are in us, but are very deep down. We want to bring this up to the front of our cortex. And when things are tough, be able to call on it. So we want to resurrect these beautiful memories we have, whether it's in a guided imagery or whether it's through childhood books, childhood photographs. If you're stuck in your apartment, look around and begin to remember what you associate with things in your house. Be creative,
really
think outside the box. Instead of being on automatic pilot, which most of us are for most of the day, pre-COVID.
Yeah. Totally right. It's a gorgeous idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So why don't we see if we can head into a bit of a meditation, and then afterwards, if people would like to ask Marilyn a direct question here, then please feel free to, you can either write down in the chat that you have a question and we can come on to the video, or you can write it and I can ask it for you. But for the next few minutes, Marilyn, it would be really lovely if we can experience some of this relaxation.
Thank you. The other thing I just want to say is if anybody has any question that they would like to ask me in private, at the end of the call, you can email it to me and I'd be delighted to engage on a one-on-one. So, if we run out of time, please feel free to contact me. And sometimes very often I don't have the answers, but in conversations on a one-on-one, we find them together.
Amazing.
So, first time I've ever done this on Zoom, guided imagery, so please bear with me. I don't know where any of you are sitting, but I'm going to invite you all to, if you can, move away from the computer and find a comfy chair, lay on a sofa, even lay on the floor. Just get away from the computer. All you want to be able to do is hear my voice. Try to get away from the computer, because what we're trying to do is go inside of ourselves and focus on your own work. I want to remind you that nobody is watching you. Nobody is judging you. I want you to try and adopt a very passive attitude about this, that there's no right or wrong. There really is no right or wrong. This is just a practice. I don't want you to worry about how good you're at it, if you're getting it, if you're not getting it. I'm asking you just to go with the flow. So I doubt that anybody is wearing any tight jeans or tight pants, but just in case anybody is, please loosen them. This is work that's best done in loose clothing. So get on your sofa, get on your floor, get on your comfy chair, lay back, wrap yourself in a blanket if you're feeling cool or chilly. Try and get yourself as comfortable as you can. Support your head perhaps with a pillow. And then I'm going to ask you, if you can, to take a moment to actually pay attention to what it's like to feel supported by this chair. We all sit on chairs, we all lay on sofas. Can you actually feel the surface underneath you and mold your body into it so you become comfortable? Take a moment to settle into this space that you've created for yourself. This is about learning how to elicit and create this relaxation response in your body. And this may be very new for a lot of us here on the call. On the other hand, some of you may have done it before. So for some it's new, for some it's a refresher, but for all of us, it's a gift. The breath, we're born with it. I'm going to ask you to begin by acknowledging the power of the breath and what it can do to our state of health, and connect to feelings of gratitude and appreciation for its very beautiful simplicity and its easy access. I think that's the greatest gift of all, that we carry it with us all the time. You don't need any ID or password to get into this, so there's nothing to remember and there's nothing to forget. That's wonderful for someone of my age. Using the breath, we're going to tap into the power of the body to teach it how to stay calmer in the face of anxiety, stress, the unknown. We don't need equipment, we don't need memberships, we don't need internet connection. And this is what I believe is its true power. It's real freedom, real power, real control that we have over our own body. Before we start, I'd just like to share with you an image that I love to conjure up in my mind. If it means nothing to you, let it go, but I want to share this. It's an image of a tree swaying back and forth in the wind, but always being able to come back to center due to its strong root system. The tree shows strength, resilience, and the ability to adapt. This is why I find this work so inspirational, and I'm so thrilled to share it with you all today, because we all want to be like this tree, strongly rooted, being able to withstand the unexpected and come back to center when we're ready. So if everybody's with me, hopefully warm and cozy, please close your eyes. In closing your eyes, your blood pressure comes down even immediately. So something as simple as closing your eyes has a physiological reaction in your body. So close your eyes and please start thinking about the muscles around your eyes, your forehead, your jaw, and release tension from wherever you may notice it residing. Very often we have tension in our shoulders, very often. So try, if you can, to just jiggle them a little bit. And if you can, from wherever you're laying down or sitting, just lower them. They tend to be up a little bit too high near our ears. So drop the tension around your face, around your jaw, and bring your focus to your breath. Just become mindful of your breath in, your inhalation. Just notice it. Slowly followed by the exhalation. As you do this, try and make it a little bit slower than you normally do and a little bit deeper. Sometimes a visualization of your lungs expanding with oxygen can help. If it does, use it. If not, just go back to the breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth or your nose, wherever you're most comfortable. As we breathe slowly and naturally, we're filling our lungs with essential oxygen, which is then free to travel throughout the body to both feed, nurture, and heal every bone, every muscle, and every organ. Slow down the breathing, notice the inhale, Pause for a second, feel no discomfort, and then gently exhale. I want you to begin to feel space in your body where before there may be tightness. You can move your limbs a little bit. You can see how they feel. Don't be afraid to move, to experience with your physicality. Keep breathing, paying attention to the sensations you feel. Notice, just notice what you're doing. It may feel a little boring, but have you ever paid attention to your breath before? Breathe in the positive, release the negative. Our mind is going to wander through this exercise. It's an absolute given. However, when it does, gently bring your mind back to the breath. Don't ask yourself any questions. Don't offer any judgments. Don't give yourself any rebukes. Just return to your breath. And you can give a little nod to that interrupting thought or sound that you noticed, and then you dispensed with. I invite you to find your own pace, your own rhythm, your own level of comfort. This takes a little bit of practice, certainly. We are all the masters of this ship. This is your journey of self-exploration. Go quietly inside to experience and learn the art of physiological relaxation. As difficult as this is for me, I'm now going to be quiet, and I'm going to ask you to cycle through 3 more breaths, slow, deep breaths, after which we'll add some guided imagery to enrich this relaxation response. So please take 2 or 3 minutes to breathe into your space, into your soul, into every organ of your body. And just focus on a breath or a beautiful word or a beautiful image. Enjoy. I'll be back soon. Take in what you need and release what you don't.
I'm going for a walk with Kathy.
We're coming to the end of the 2 minutes. I don't know whether that felt very long for most of you or very short. That's just what I decided to start with to give you a little bit of introduction. So wherever you are, I'm going to ask you to let this be your last breath before we add some guided imagery. As you take your last breath in, follow the rise and fall of your tummy as you come full circle, and end with a long, slow, deep, deliberate exhalation, letting everything go. Now I'm going to ask you to remain in as comfortable position as you can, changing nothing about your physicality. But we're going to do something which is very much a favorite of mine. We're going to deepen and strengthen the relaxation response that you've begun, hopefully, to experience in your body, the soft. Lost connection. Are we still there?
Yeah, we're still with you.
Okay. Forgive us. I think that was a technical glitch. The unique and personal guided imagery experience that I'm going to try and lead you through now, this is yours and yours alone. This makes that generic breathing practice that we've just done, it's going to turn this into something very personal and unique to you. As you just keep your breathing stable and calm and slow and deliberate, I'm going to ask you to begin to think about a place where you are surrounded by love, freedom, peace, acceptance, or anything that comes close to any of these concepts that are meaningful to you. This place can be anywhere, from any time in your life, past, present, or even an anticipated event in the future, hopefully when this virus has left us. Think about this place. Take time. It may take a moment or two to decide where you want to go. There might be many places you want to go. Choose one. Don't worry too much about it. Just find that place of joy. Connect to your memories. Tap into your unlimited imagination. Don't limit yourself. There are no rights or wrongs that I say again over and over again. In this vision, you could be alone. You might be surrounded by friends and family. You might be in the mountains climbing. You might be on a beach lazing with the water licking at your toes. You might be a child playing in your childhood home, or remembering special moments with people no longer with us. Go there. I invite you to bring all your senses into the exploration, to bring this imagery to life. Think about colors, think about textures, think about smells, think about sights, think about tastes, everything that you experience in this place of joy. Flood your senses with this experience. Your eyes are closed. Be bold, go there. Remember that even silence has a sound. Be slow and deliberate in your exploration. Allow yourself to bathe in the serenity and joy of this place, and notice how your body feels as it follows wherever your mind goes. Let your mind lead. Explore, experience, Connect to the happiness. And I invite you to linger here for a while as you breathe slowly and deeply into and through this positive imagery, which is yours and yours alone. Take a moment to continue your journey in your very special place. Before this practice comes to an end, please know that we can all return to this place of peace and joy, our sanctuary, at any time. It's always there. It's always waiting for us. And it can be different places at many different times that you do this. It does not have to be the same experience. This can be a beautiful explorative journey of happy places that have been in your life at different times. I truly believe that this is one of the most meaningful gifts that we can give to ourselves whenever we choose to make time and space in our busy lives to do so. Gently, as you come back to the present moment in time, bring your awareness back to the gentle ebb and flow of your breath. Take a few more meaningful, deep, heart-healthy, mind-stabling breaths. Finally, before we open our eyes, I invite you to take a moment to think about some of those things in your life for which you are grateful and appreciative, and acknowledge them in the here and now, in the silence. Flood your mind with gratitude and appreciation for everything that you have experienced in the past and the present, and hopefully again in the future. And as you slowly open your eyes, please remain still in this moment for a few seconds, enjoying and savoring this precious state of relaxation that you have created for yourself, by yourself. In closing, I would like to thank you all for taking this journey with me today. It took trust and courage on your part. Thank you, and kol hakavod.
Well, thanks, Marilyn.
My pleasure. It was a little different without music. I want to explain to the audience that normally we have some beautiful, relaxing music, whether it's of my choice or of the choice of you. It really does enhance the experience dramatically by changing the energy in the room. But there were some technical challenges, so we decided to do it in silence.
Oh, thank you so much. I know that this is a strange old world, and that you agreed to come on and talk to us through Zoom and to lead the meditation was not necessarily simple, and I'm extremely grateful. And I know I speak on behalf of everyone who have sent messages already saying how grateful they are.
I'm very, very touched. It was the first time doing this in this Zoom environment, so there is a learning curve for me too. And thank you for encouraging me and for coming along the journey with me. Hopefully it will all get better as we get used to the technology.
As I said to everyone, what I'm going to do is share a few things. One is I'm going to share Marilyn's contact details, both her website, which is managestressansleep.com, and I'll put that in the chat. So that's managestressansleep.com. If you signed up via email, I'll also email you out a copy of this recording, which I'll load onto YouTube. And as Marilyn said, if you would like to be in contact directly you can contact her via her website, which is managestressandsleep.com, or Marilyn, if you want afterwards, you can share with me your email address so that people can contact you.
With pleasure, with pleasure. Yes, of course.
Before we head off though, if anyone would like to ask a question, please put your hand up or mention in the chat. If there was something you wanted to just mention again, specifically a question or something that had already been said, or something that hasn't been said yet, I would love to give that opportunity to people to ask a question. It's really important. Bearing in mind, we're looking for questions more than statements, although sometimes it can be mixed into the two. But if you would like to ask, please, now's the time. And if you think it's something more private, then of course, please contact Marilyn directly. I'll give a few moments. I'll carry on speaking if anyone does come up with it. As I said, if you signed up to an initiative that I started called Kemayim. Kemayim means like water, because I think that life can flow a bit more if we let it. And if we're not able to let it, sometimes we can do things to let it flow a tiny bit. So if I've got your email address, I'll put you on my mailing list. I'm not looking to send out loads of junk mail, but I am looking to have more of these kind of conversations which are insightful, which are helpful, and hopefully practical as well. Looks like we haven't got any direct questions tonight. So with that, again, Marilyn, thank you so much for your time.
Oh.
Incredibly insightful. And
it was a beautiful experience for me. A really meaningful experience for me. And I hope I was able to convey information that is just helpful to us all. We're all in this together. We all need to talk and learn and share from each other. There's no experts in this. Trust me, there are no experts in this. But there are some techniques that can help. And I'm thrilled and delighted and honored to have been able to share them with you all today. Please feel free to contact me in any shape or form. And Rich, you know, I love doing this, and if it was helpful, you know, I'd be very thrilled to engage in smaller groups, larger groups. If anybody would like to take advantage of my ability to just help people at these difficult, stinky times.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rich, for all your work to make this happen. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. And thank you everyone for coming on. I know to take time out of busy Sundays, whether that's the first day of your week or the last day of your week, it's a rough old day. So thank you so much for taking time out. I hope you found this valuable, and that we can get together on more occasions, both here digitally and also physically when this whole bloody thing can be over. But most importantly, having taken a tiny bit of knowledge and wisdom from this trying time and taking it into the good times as well. With that, I'll let you sign off as and when you would like to. I'll stick around here smiling, but thank you very much.
Me too.
See you soon. Be safe and well.
Be well.